When my wife told me she had a business trip to Miami, I kissed her goodbye at the airport, thinking she was chasing career goals. 3 days later, I was standing in front of her at a luxury beach resort, watching her share a candlelit dinner with a man I'd never seen before. I wasn't there by coincidence. I had tracked her phone. I had seen the hotel charges for champagne and couples massages. And in my hand, a folder containing divorce papers and all the evidence of her lies. She looked up, her face drained of color. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" she whispered. I smiled, calm, controlled. "I was about to ask you the same thing, Natalie. How's that pharmaceutical conference going?" Her so-called business trip was nothing more than a carefully planned getaway with her lover. But what she didn't know was that I had planned something too. Now let me tell you exactly how I uncovered every detail, without raising suspicion, and why sometimes the best revenge is delivered in silence. What would you do if you caught your spouse like this? Would you explode in public? Or stay calm and let the truth speak for itself? Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned, because this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about taking back control with dignity. I'm Ryan Matthews, 36 years old, a software developer living in Austin, Texas. For most people, success comes with celebration. For me, it came with distance. 7 years ago, when I married Natalie, we were inseparable. We built dreams together in a tiny apartment, surviving on instant noodles and late-night talks about the future. She believed in me when my startup was just an idea scribbled on napkins. I believed in her when she was hustling as a junior pharmaceutical rep, driving across the state to meet quotas. But when my company got acquired and the money started flowing in, things changed. Not overnight. It was subtle at first. Natalie started making little comments. "You're always working. Your company matters more than I do. You don't even notice when I dress up anymore." I tried to explain. The acquisition meant longer hours, more responsibility. I wasn't out partying. I was building stability for both of us. But no matter how much I reassured her, she kept pulling away. Weekend getaways turned into solo trips with her friends. Dinner conversations became quiet meals with eyes glued to her phone. And intimacy faded into routine excuses. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Every marriage has them, right? Then came the announcement. One evening, Natalie walked into the kitchen, suitcase half-packed, and said, "I have a week-long conference in Miami. Corporate training. Mandatory." I looked up from my laptop, exhausted but supportive. "Miami? That sounds nice. Maybe it'll be a good break for you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something felt off, but I brushed it aside. I wasn't going to be the paranoid husband who questioned his wife's career. We had a shared rule: trust until given a reason not to. So I drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, and wished her luck. But that uneasy feeling didn't leave me. It wasn't until 2 nights later, when I passed by our bedroom and heard her voice, that everything shifted. She was supposed to be in Miami, yet her tablet was still connected to our home smart system. A glitch, maybe, but it played her end of a phone call loud and clear. I froze when I heard her laugh. Soft, flirtatious. Then came the words that hit me like a punch to the gut. "Don't worry, Alex. Ryan's clueless. He thinks I'm at some boring conference." Silence. Then, "Yes, I booked the suite with the ocean view. I can't wait for our dinner tomorrow night." I stood there, heart racing, my mind refusing to believe what I'd just heard. Natalie, my wife, wasn't in Miami for work. She was there for him, for Alex. In that moment, every late-night girls' trip, every cold shoulder, every complaint about my work ethic, it all made sense. But I wasn't going to confront her over a single overheard call. No, I needed proof. Real proof. And if Natalie thought I was too busy to notice, she was about to realize just how focused I could be when the person I trusted most turned me into a fool. That night, I opened our shared cloud account, something we'd set up years ago to coordinate travel plans. What I found made my stomach turn. A reservation confirmation for a luxury suite at one of Miami's most exclusive beach resorts. Champagne package included. Couples spa treatments scheduled. This wasn't corporate training. This was betrayal. wrapped in five-star service. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands trembling, not with rage, but with clarity. I wasn't going to call her. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was going to see it with my own eyes. And when I did, there would be no shouting, no dramatic scenes. Just the truth, served cold. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying her words. Don't worry, Alex. Ryan's clueless. Clueless. That's what she thought of me. By morning, my decision was made. I logged into the location sharing app we'd both forgotten about, something we set up years ago after a road trip mishap. For safety, we said. A small gesture of trust back then. Now it was my window into the truth. Her phone pinged. Right there, Miami Beach. Not anywhere near a conference center, but at the exact address of that luxury resort from the booking confirmation. It was no longer suspicion, it was fact. But I wasn't going to sit at home, stewing in anger. I booked a flight for that afternoon. No calls, no texts. I packed light, just enough clothes for a week, and a folder. Inside it, a fresh set of divorce papers I had downloaded but never thought I'd need. By the time I landed in Miami, the sun was setting. The air was thick with salt and humidity, almost suffocating. I checked into the same resort, but I made sure my room was on a different floor. Standard room. Nothing fancy. I didn't come here to enjoy the view. I came to watch her destroy what was left of our marriage. The resort had an app for guests, room service, spa bookings, even restaurant reservations. And thanks to our shared account for credit cards, I could see every charge Natalie made in real time. By the second day, the list read like a romance novel. Champagne delivered to her suite, a sunset couples massage, dinner for two at the rooftop restaurant. There was no sign of any business meetings, just indulgence. I spent my days blending in, sunglasses on, casual clothes, sitting by the pool or walking the beach, always keeping an eye on the app and her location. I spotted her for the first time on the afternoon of day 2. She was laughing, barefoot in the sand, wearing a flowy dress I'd never seen before. And beside her, Alex, tall, athletic, the kind of guy who probably spent more time at the gym than behind a desk. They looked like a couple on their honeymoon. I stood at a distance watching as she leaned into him, her smile wide and carefree. The same smile she hadn't given me in months. It hurt, more than I expected. But I held on to that pain, letting it sharpen my focus. I wasn't here to break down. I was here to make sure there was no way she could twist this story when we got back home. That evening, I followed their digital trail. Room charges showed another dinner reservation at the resort's signature restaurant, the most expensive spot on the property. Perfect. I spent hours rehearsing what I'd say. Would I call her out in front of everyone? Would I confront Alex too? But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I didn't need to cause a scene. Natalie's face when she saw me would say everything. By the third evening, I was ready. I dressed simply, nothing flashy. I tucked the divorce papers into a slim folder and grabbed my phone, camera app open and ready. When I walked into that restaurant, I spotted them instantly, seated by the window overlooking the ocean, a bottle of wine between them. They were holding hands. I took a deep breath and crossed the room, each step steady. Natalie looked up mid-laugh and froze. Her hands snapped away from Alex's like she'd touched fire. Her face drained of color, her mouth opening but no words coming out. That's when I knew. I didn't need to say much at all. I stopped at their table, calm, collected, and simply said, "Funny running into you here, Natalie." Her eyes widened in panic. Alex looked between us, confused, clearly unaware of who I was. Natalie finally managed to stammer, "Ryan, what are you doing here?" I placed the folder on the table, my voice steady. "I was about to ask you the same thing." Nicole. For a moment, none of us spoke. Natalie's eyes were locked on the folder I'd placed between the wine glasses, like it might explode if she touched it. Alex glanced at her, then at me. "You know him?" he asked, his voice low, cautious. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Alex, this is Ryan, my husband." Alex's chair scraped against the floor as he pushed back, shock flashing across his face. Husband? Natalie, you told me you were divorced. I let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Yeah, she seems to leave that part out when booking ocean view suites, I said, keeping my tone even. Natalie reached out, her hand trembling. Ryan, please. Let's not do this here. I raised an eyebrow. Do what, Natalie? Have an honest conversation for once? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't interested in hearing excuses. I tapped the folder. These are divorce papers, along with detailed records of your little vacation here, every charge, every location ping, every lie. Her face crumpled, but I didn't see regret, only fear. Fear of losing the comfort, the lifestyle, the image she'd built on my back. Alex stood up, running a hand through his hair, clearly blindsided. You said you were single. You said your ex was out of the picture. I turned to him, feeling a strange sense of calm. Don't worry, Alex. She'll be single soon enough. I grabbed the folder, slid it closer to Natalie, and leaned in just enough for her to hear me clearly. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to cause a scene. I just wanted you to see that I know, and that I'm done. I straightened up, ready to walk away, when Alex spoke again, his voice sharper this time. Wait, before you go, there's something you should see. I paused, surprised. Alex pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages before holding the screen up to me. There they were, text after text from Natalie, flirty messages, explicit promises, and most damning of all, her words. Don't worry about Ryan, he's just my safety net. You're not the only one I see when I travel. Each message was a knife twisting deeper. I felt the air leave my lungs, not because I didn't expect betrayal, but because I hadn't realized just how calculated it was. Natalie wasn't swept up in a single affair. She was living a double life, using me as a financial anchor while chasing thrills behind my back. Alex shook his head, disgusted. I had no idea, man. I thought she was different. I met his eyes, and for a brief second, there was an understanding between two strangers, both played by the same person. It's not your fault, I said quietly. We both got fooled. Natalie's voice cracked as she tried to regain control. Ryan, we can talk about this. I cut her off with a glance that ended the conversation before it began. There's nothing left to talk about. I turned and walked away, leaving her and Alex in a stunned silence. As I exited the restaurant, I felt the weight of finality settle over me. This was it. There was no fixing this, no counseling, no second chances. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. And strangely, beneath the ache in my chest, I felt relief. Because when you hit the point of no return, there's a strange freedom in knowing you'll never have to wonder again. I spent the rest of the night on the balcony of my modest room, watching the waves crash against the shore. Alone, but no longer blind. The next morning, I booked a meeting with a local notary to officially sign my portion of the divorce papers. Natalie would be served before her business trip ended. And me? I decided to stay a few extra days, not to wallow, but to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's lies. I was finally free. Walking out of that restaurant wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I knew Natalie. Once the shock wore off, she'd do exactly what she always did. Spin the story, play the victim, and try to salvage whatever benefits she could. But this time, I was ahead of her. That night, sitting alone on the balcony, I mapped out every step of what needed to happen next. No anger, no revenge fantasies, just strategy. The first thing I did was secure my finances. We had joint accounts, but I'd always kept a separate personal account, something Natalie never cared to ask about when money was flowing freely. By sunrise, I had transferred my salary and savings into that protected account, freezing the joint credit cards to prevent any last-minute shopping sprees when she realized the game was up. Next, I contacted my lawyer back in Austin. I had already drafted generic divorce papers before flying out. Call it gut instinct. But now it was time to personalize them, armed with undeniable evidence. I uploaded every screenshot from the resort app, room charges, spa appointments, romantic dinners. I attached the photos I'd discreetly taken of Natalie and Alex on the beach, at the restaurant, holding hands like newlyweds, And thanks to Alex's unexpected cooperation, I included the text messages he'd shown me, proof that this wasn't a one-time mistake, but a calculated pattern of deception. By noon, my lawyer had everything he needed to file. Texas isn't exactly forgiving when it comes to infidelity, especially with this level of documentation. Natalie wouldn't be walking away with half of what she thought she was entitled to. But I wasn't done. There was still the matter of Natalie's employer. You see, in her rush to lie, she'd made a critical mistake. She used her company's name to justify this fake business trip. I wasn't vindictive by nature, but I believed in accountability. So I drafted a simple professional email to her company's HR department. No dramatic accusations, just a polite inquiry. I wanted to confirm if Natalie Matthews is indeed attending a company-sponsored conference at the Grand Shore Miami Resort this week. As she mentioned, I'm planning to send a gift to celebrate her achievement, but I couldn't find any details about the event. It didn't take long for the response to come back. We appreciate your message, Mr. Matthews. However, there is no company event in Miami this week, nor has Natalie been scheduled for any corporate travel. Allah. I thanked them for their time and left it at that. I knew once Natalie returned, she'd have more than just divorce papers waiting for her. The final piece of my plan was personal. Closure. I booked a private session with a photographer at the resort, not for vanity, but to capture a moment I'd never forget. Me, standing alone on the beach at sunset, not as the man who'd been betrayed, but as the man who walked away stronger. I sent one of those photos to my lawyer, asking him to include it in the final package served to Natalie. No words, just the image, a reminder that while she was busy living a lie, I had already moved on. The next day, I checked out of the resort. As I passed by the lobby, I saw Natalie at the front desk, arguing with staff, probably about her bill now that the joint cards were frozen. She didn't see me, and I didn't stop. I headed straight to the airport, boarding my flight back to Austin with nothing but a carry-on and a clear mind. By the time Natalie landed home 2 days later, the locks had been changed, her belongings boxed and stored, and the official paperwork delivered. She called, twice. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Every step I took wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming control. Natalie expected a scene, tears, shouting, maybe even forgiveness. What she got was silence and consequences. And that, I realized, was far more powerful than any outburst. Because when someone plays games with your trust, the smartest move isn't to fight for what's broken. It's to walk away and make sure they know you'll never be played again. 2 days after I returned to Austin, Natalie showed up at our house. Well, my house now. I watched through the security camera as she stood at the front door, furiously pressing the doorbell. The confusion on her face when her key didn't work was almost theatrical. Moments later, my phone buzzed. Her name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. A text this time. "Ryan, what is this? Why can't I get in? We need to talk, please." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the footage to my lawyer just to document her attempt to access the property post-notice. An hour later, another message came through. Longer, angrier. "I can't believe you're doing this. You blindsided me with these papers. After everything we've been through, at least have the decency to face me." Decency. That word almost made me laugh. Where was her decency when she was booking ocean view suites with Alex? When she was calling me her safety net? The next day, Natalie tried a different tactic. She showed up at my office, but security had already been briefed. They escorted her out before she could make a scene. And yes, I got that footage too. Later that evening, I finally agreed to a meeting, but on my terms, neutral ground, my lawyer present. When Natalie walked into the conference room, she looked nothing like the confident woman I'd seen at the resort. Gone was the carefree smile. In its place, a mix of desperation and fury. She sat down, glaring at me. "You really think you can just erase 7 years like this?" I stayed silent, letting my lawyer handle the formalities. She pushed the papers across the table toward me. "This is brutal, Ryan. You're leaving me with nothing." My lawyer calmly pointed out that Texas law, combined with her clear infidelity, didn't exactly favor her claims. Natalie's eyes burned into me. waiting for some sign of weakness, some hint that I'd cave. But there was nothing left to give. I looked her in the eye for the first time since Miami and said, "You made your choices, Natalie. All I did was make sure you faced them." She scoffed, crossing her arms. "So what now? You just move on? Like none of this mattered?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "It mattered. Enough for me to know I deserve better." The meeting ended with her signing the papers, reluctantly, but knowing she had no leverage. A week later, Natalie was officially out of my life. But the fallout didn't stop there. Remember that email to her company? Turns out, falsifying a business trip and misusing company resources isn't something employers take lightly. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Natalie was let go for violating corporate ethics. No job, no husband, no luxury lifestyle, just the consequences of her own actions. Alex, he reached out once, sent me a message saying he'd cut ties with Natalie the moment he learned the truth. We weren't going to be friends, but I appreciated the gesture. As for me, I didn't celebrate. There were no victory laps, no petty social media posts, just quiet closure. I moved into a new place a few months later, something smaller, more personal, a space that felt like mine, free of memories tainted by betrayal. Friends asked how I stayed so calm through it all. The truth? I realized that revenge doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes the most satisfying justice is watching someone lose access to the life they took for granted, while you walk away untouched. Natalie had expected drama, tears, fights, maybe even a chance to manipulate the narrative. What she got instead was silence, and a door she could never reopen. And that's when I understood. The real power isn't in exposing someone to the world. It's in showing them that their betrayal doesn't define you, that you can rise above it without ever sinking to their level. It's been a year since that day in Miami, a year since I watched the person I thought I knew become a stranger in front of my eyes. People often ask me if I regret how I handled it, if I ever wished I had confronted Natalie sooner, yelled, exposed her publicly, made her pay in a more dramatic way. But the truth is, I don't regret a single step. Because walking away with my dignity intact was worth more than any outburst or revenge fantasy. I learned that betrayal doesn't just shatter your trust in others, it tests your trust in yourself. It forces you to decide who you want to be when everything stable crumbles beneath you. I could have let anger consume me. I could have dragged Natalie's name through the mud, made sure everyone knew every sordid detail. But what would that have changed? The damage was already done. What mattered was how I rebuilt after it. Today, I live a quieter life, simpler, more intentional. I focus on the things and people that truly deserve my energy. And Natalie? She became a chapter I closed, not a wound I kept open. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. When someone betrays you, they want control. They want to dictate your reaction, to pull you into their chaos. Don't give them that power. Sometimes the strongest move isn't fighting back. It's knowing when to walk away, calmly, confidently, and without looking over your shoulder. Because real strength isn't proven in how loud you respond. It's in how well you rise above. So what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you confront them in public, expose every detail? Or would you choose silence and let the weight of their own actions be punishment enough? Let me know in the comments. And remember, never underestimate the power of quiet revenge. Delivered with dignity,